Hello, everyone. This is Sabrina Paganoni, and I am connecting from the Healy Center for ALS. This is our weekly update. I'm giving everyone a few seconds to join from the waiting room. I see that people are still joining from the waiting room. So thank you again for joining us. We give this update every week. As you know, this update was requested by the patient community who really wanted to get a sense of how we're doing and get real-time updates. So thank you again for joining us. See, people are still joining from the waiting room. And tonight, it's really my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lahham, our PI from UPMC in Pittsburgh. We are so excited to have a site in Pittsburgh. We had other sites in Philadelphia, but this is the first site in Pittsburgh, and we're happy to offer participation to people who are from that area. So if you can go to the next slide, I will turn this over to you. Tawfiq, please take it away.
Thank you, Sabrina, and thank you much for having us presenting ourselves today here. So next slide. So at University of Pittsburgh, currently we are following between 150 to 160 patients on regular basis. We get to see about between 50 to 60 new patients a year. Some of these patients will come mainly for second opinion, but most of the patients will establish and continue to follow up in our clinic. We get referral mostly from Western Pennsylvania, but also we cover part of Ohio and West Virginia. Our clinic is supported by University of Pittsburgh, the UPMC Medical Center, and also by the ALS Association and the MDA. Next slide. We have a big team, and I'm glad to see it's growing. Katya is our speech therapist who do the communication device assessment and management. Jim is our speech therapist who do the swallow evaluation and management. Kathy and Alex is our PT and OT. Jackie is our nutritionist. Melissa is our respiratory therapist, and you know her, you have been working with her closely. She is our also research coordinator. Monica is our social worker, and Liz, our newest add to the team. She started with us in November 2021 as the neuropsychologist who do and offer counseling and assessment with our patient. Michelle and Pecky is basically the one who run the whole show for us. Otherwise, it would be much tougher. Next slide. We are participating in multiple clinical trials and NIH-funded research. So we're working closely with the University of Pittsburgh Brain Institute Live Like Lou ALS Center with Chris Donnelly on his study for TDP modifier with other centers. Also, we're going to be one of two sites with a switch trial with Mount Sinai recruiting patients for the PCI for augmented communication, which we are excited about it. It's still a very early stage feasibility and safety trial, but it sounds very promising. And we're looking to enroll our first patient in the next couple of months. Next slide. So the main focus on our center now is the clinical trial with finally, after kind of some long time, we get to be activated for the HEALEY ALS Platform Regimen E. We were activated in July this year, and so far we enrolled 3 patients. We have 5 patients in the screening process. We are trying to do everything as perfect as possible. We are getting a little bit slower beginning, but I'm glad to say it's very steady. And our goal is to be able to recruit 2 patients a month, and hopefully we'll be able to keep up that speed with other regimens down the road. Melissa, as we said, is our research coordinator, and that's her email and that's her phone number. And that's the best way to communicate with us. As I said, we are basically covering our center, but also we are getting patients coming from Ohio specifically for the trial. So I'm glad to offer that here. We have also some unfunded, or some other way, it's basically UPMC funded study that we are doing with our neurosurgery and neuroradiology department, mainly working on a biomarker for upper motor neuron like changes. And we are doing the high definition fiber tractography screening our patients, mainly with PLS, but also including ALS patient and other neurodegenerative disorders. And so far, we have about 17 patients screened since we started in July 2021, recruiting for this trial. We have some promising findings, and I hope to expand it over there more too. And by that, I think I'm done with my part and would be happy to take any question at the end.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So if anyone has any questions for UPMC and Dr. Lahham, please put them in the Q&A box. And while you type questions for our guest speaker, we can move to the next slide and provide our weekly update. And so, as you know, at this point, up to now, we have included up to 5 regimens in the platform trial, but this is a perpetual adaptive trial. So as we wrap up the first few regimens, we still have one ongoing, actively recruiting new participants. That's Regimen E, but we are also planning on adding new regimens. So we're actively working with multiple companies for that. So for 2023, there will certainly be more regimens. Next slide. And so far, in terms of the one that's currently enrolling, Regimen E, which is testing trialos from Silos, we continue to make progress on enrollment. So thank you so much to everyone. I know we are watching the numbers very closely. As of right now, 95 individuals have been randomized within Regimen E. So what that means is that 95 individuals have initiated treatment with study drug, active or placebo. And as you know, the active to placebo ratio is particularly favorable in this trial. It's a 3-to-1 ratio. That means that every 4 people who enter the trial, only 1 receives placebo. So this is much better than the regular 1-to-1 ratio that we have in most trials, or even the 2-to-1 ratio that we have in some trials. Now, while 95 people have already started study drug, we have more that have been considered or are being considered for enrollment. Those are the people who have signed informed consent. So the first step to be considered to actually receive the drug is to first sign informed consent, and then there's a screening procedure. Some people may not be eligible for the trial, and other people are still in the screening phase. And our goal is to randomize about 160 individuals. So clearly there is still time to enroll. We really want to conclude enrollment in 2022 for sure, over the next few weeks, so that then we can follow all the 160 participants and then analyze the results in 2023. Next slide. And so right now we have 49 sites, and some of them have been with us from the very beginning of the trial, enrolling even in regimens A, B, C, and D, and those are the ones labeled in blue, and the ones that are labeled in green and underlined on the right are the ones that joined us as a second group of sites, and are now part of Regimen E, and that includes UPMC. So again, we are very, very happy that you joined and are actively enrolling in Regimen E. Compared to last week, we activated a couple more sites. Those are the last 2 listed on the right, Johns Hopkins and Columbia. So definitely important to continue to activate sites, and we expect more activations. So more sites starting to enroll for Regimen E over the next few weeks. And then again, we plan on completing enrollment with the sites that are activated soon. Next slide. So Catherine and Alison are our patient navigators. Catherine is with us today, and she and Alison are always available to talk to you. So again, we were sharing their phone and email, as well as QR codes for the weekly webinar registration and the ALS link, which is our newsletter. I do encourage everyone always, every time I see somebody in clinic or when people ask me, how do we get sort of periodic information about research news? And obviously there are many sources. There's many excellent patient groups and organizations and foundations that have their own newsletters, and this is ours. This is the ALS link from the Healey Center, and we provide information about this trial, but also other research. Now, we're very excited about our upcoming guest speakers. Next week, September 22nd, we'll have Mariah and Megan, who are our lead site monitors for the platform trial, and we really want to focus on the importance of data quality, data cleaning. These trials are important important because they could potentially support the registration of new drugs. So there is very really top-notch processes in terms of data quality. And so the site monitors are the ones who go on site and verify data points to make sure that, again, we have the highest quality data. So they'll talk to us about their processes. And we have other speakers who we're planning for later this year who will talk about sort of other operational aspects of trial design and conduct, and also the FDA process, etc. Because I think these are very complex kind of processes, and we really want to unpack them for you and have guest speakers who are experts in these topics. Then we will have more guest speakers from our sites. Dr. Elliott, who also is a site that joined more recently. We're very, very excited to be working with him. Is in Seattle as Swedish Medical. We have 2 sites in Seattle, which is great. And also we'll have Catherine join us from the University of Massachusetts in Worcester. She's a lead research, one of the most experienced research coordinators really at any site. And so it's really great to see that we hear her perspective. I know we oftentimes have investigators like myself or Dr. Al-Lahham, but it's also great to hear from coordinators who are really the boots on the ground. They are the ones that can explain best how to best interface or interact with sites, and how to kind of, discuss options for enrollment. So with that, I would move to the last slide, which is for us to let you know that if you have questions about Regimen E, which is the regimen that's currently enrolling in the trial. So if you want to join the trial as a participant, or if you want to recommend or refer anyone who is who could be interested in participating, I would really invite you to join this webinar that's provided by NILS, the NILS Consortium, our group of clinical trial sites. Dr. Sukovic and Dr. Lada, who are the lead investigators for Regimen E, will provide updates on Regimen E and also more information about the science behind the drug, about the logistics, and what to expect if you want to enroll. So please join us for this webinar, which will be given live on October 4th at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's a Tuesday, but will also be recorded and is always available, as are all our NILS webinars, always available as a recorded webinar, so you can always access that. So maybe we'll keep this slide up because it's new information, and hopefully people can either use the QR code. You can point your phone camera to the QR code, and it should lead you directly right now to the registration link, or you can use the actual website or the link to the URL. So I'll start taking a few questions. So if somebody participates in Regimen E, that's the regimen that's enrolling right now, and starts participating in the trial of the next few weeks, how long is the trial? Is the trial 24 weeks or longer? And so, Dr. Lahham, do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
Sure. So the trial is actually short, and that's a good thing here. So it's a 6 months, 24 weeks. And the good thing is when patients finish with a regimen, if they want to enroll for another regimen, depending if they will be still qualified to screen for the master protocol. So that's a big advantage in this platform trials.
Exactly. And then the other option, because we really want to give people as many options as possible, is to also enroll in the open label extension. So do you want to maybe explain how open label extensions work, and, in general, like, from your point of view?
So actually, we are not participating yet in that. We would like to be part of.
Oh, you will, yeah.
Oh, yes.
You haven't started yet, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't start with that yet. So I would leave that question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, whenever somebody completes the placebo-controlled period, which is 6 months, then they can continue in the open label extension where they receive active treatment. And in fact, the first group of sites that has started with us on regimens A, B, C, and D, they do have several people on open label extension for the previous regimens, because those are the people who have finished the 6-month placebo-controlled trial. And you're right, Dr. Lahham, since you are relatively new and you just started on regimen E, you haven't experienced that yet, but you will. So
I will.
and it's great because it's really a great option for your patients and all the patients at the different sites after the placebo-controlled period. They can continue if they want in an open label extension. So because some people have enrolled more recently, they're not eligible for that yet, but once they get to the 24-week or 6-month mark, they'll be eligible. So that's another great option. There's a good question here about enrollment for regimen E. Is it going slower than previous regimens? So I would say that we are happy with enrollment in the sense that we continue to make progress, but this was our first intravenous infusion enrollment. So I would say that, yes, I mean, that's definitely not, that I also would say that the enrollment for the previous one was absolutely extraordinary. So anything else pales in comparison. And so, so that's perhaps why, if you've been following this series, again, it was absolutely extraordinary before, and now it feels slower. But again, I would say that for an intravenous intervention, it's actually going quite well. It's just that, again, in comparison, it's not as fast. And then in terms of the progress on the other regimens, again, the other regimens enrolled really quickly. And so there's a question about, sort of the results, when are we going to have the results? And so thank you again for your patience. I know that we are basically really getting ready to release the results. There's still some data points and other things that need to happen. And there's some of these is tied partially to regimen D because the different regimens borrow placebo data, and so some things, again, the last final tweaks need that as well. But I would say, and I wish I could tell you the exact date. I actually can't wait to know myself, but it's going to be really soon, over the next few days or weeks. And again, we're really trying to flesh out the last data points. There's a good question. I do want to continue along the lines of the open label extension. So the specific question is, let's say that somebody participates in the placebo-controlled portion of the trial, which is the first 24 weeks or 6 months, and they are either on active or placebo, and they don't know if they are on active or placebo. What happens after that? So if they enroll in the open label extension, for sure they will receive active drug at that point. Now, we are not able, per FDA guidance, to tell them if they were on placebo or active before. So we know that after week 24, they will be on active for sure, but we cannot tell them if they were on active or placebo before. And there's a very specific reason for that. Because the open label extension is still part of the same trial and is very important, as for those of you who follow FDA news, you may be following also the AMLIC's advisory committees, and so you know that the open label extension data was really part of the package, was really important, and that's also under review. So because open label extensions are so important for us to be able to tell if the drug works or not, we cannot unblind, or we cannot tell people if they were on active or placebo before, because that would potentially bias the study and the results. Now, ultimately, we will be able to reveal that. So at the end, after we know the results, we will be able to tell everyone if they were on active or placebo, but again, not until we have the final results. And the question was also, there was a clarifying questions about, when we'll have results for D, as in David, in addition to A, B, and C. And that should be right after we have the first set. Again, the enrollment was so extraordinary, for the first 4 regimens, that what happened was that A, B, and C started at the same time. D, as in David, started 6 months later, but because enrollment was going so fast, it basically caught up. And so now we're going to have the results for D right after A, B, and C, even if it started 6 months later, because again, they were able to have that amazing enrollment. And so there's not going to be much of a gap. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, between the first group of results and D. So there's a question for you, Dr. Lahham, in terms of your specific site, UPMC ALS Center. Are you already offering expanded access, or is that something that you could be offering in the future? Are you interested in that?
Absolutely. So we will be offering the expanded access for the HEALEY platform patients. With the Regimen E, we will be part of that. We get quite a lot of question about other trials and other expanded access, like with the MLX, and the resources was not as flexible as we would like it to be. But I think now, especially that we are building the experience with the platform trial, and we would be part of the expanded access. This is something that we would like to participate and hope for that.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe can you explain, like, kind of as a site PI or sort of kind of the lead at the center? Can you explain a little bit more, the resources, like what, how do you put together the resources and the team, maybe so that people understand kind of the how people can grow their centers,
So for expanded access or in general?
In general, but also with relation to expanded access.
Yeah, so I have the luxury that I joined UPMC with Dr. Lacomas, who actually have participated in multiple trials before. We had really kind of also good luck in recruiting a very excellent research coordinator, Melissa, who is also in our team as a respiratory therapist. So that kind of make it really nicely connected with participating in the trial and enrolling more patients, hopefully in the future. Also, we are expanding the team to add a nurse coordinator / navigator for the patients, where basically we'll link more in the clinical part to the clinical trials. Now, are we going to look to add an extra team members down the road? I think that's likely what's going to happen. It's basically available resources, but just try to channel it in the right direction. And with more experience that we are building with the trial and being able to actually recruit and enroll patients, and I think there's not at all shortage in demand on trial for patients to enroll in studies. So that's basically how it's going to work. And we have all the kind of settings to start with, and I think right now, hopefully it will put in place.
Great. And I see some comments in the chat about people are having a good experience at your site with your coordinator. So thank you for those comments. And yes, as you said, it's a stepwise process where, as the team gets established, now we are in this new situation where there's more trials than before. And so essentially now sites have to kind of readjust to that. Before there were fewer trials and not much in terms of expanded access at all. Now that if we want to continue to offer more trial, more EAPs, we need to continue to grow and hire more people, and every site is trying to do that.
Exactly, and especially with this advantage of a platform trial, where basically you don't need to invent the whole wheel again. You have a system build, and it will help to build kind of a workflow that can be copied and repeated in multiple different regimens.
Absolutely. So there's a good question about drug availability. So the question is essentially, if there's a positive result, how long would it take before a drug is available to people with ALS? And so that's a great question. And actually, we are one of the speakers that we are scheduling and bringing on over the next few weeks is a person with ALS who is a former pharma executive who can explain that in detail and explain how the process works. I can tell you from my own experience that in general, after a study is positive, then there has to be sort of a series of discussions with the FDA to make sure that the data package is enough for submission of a new drug application for marketing. What that means is that the results of the trial are only one of the several pieces that have to be put together for a new drug to be approved. So for example, when a new drug gets approved, it gets approved based on the results of, let's say, one trial or two trials. For example, the platform trial could be one such trial. But then there's other pieces that have to go into the package. For example, toxicology, animal experiments, labeling instructions, a number of pharmacology topics, etc. They all enter the clinical package. And so, so essentially, that's what takes time to assemble. And also, if there's some pieces that are missing, they have to be collected. So So essentially, I cannot tell you because it would depend on what package items are already available or how the discussions with the FDA go. I can tell you that it generally takes a few months for any company to submit a package. And then once the package has been submitted, if it goes for expedited review, it's 6 months on average. If it goes for regular review, it's longer, 9 months or so. So that's why it takes time, I guess, because there is this multi-step process. I would agree with you that it's a lot of steps, and one would hope that they become faster. And I know that there's several efforts in that direction, but that's kind of the reality of the context right now. And again, we're trying to give more details so that it's clear, all the different aspects, and hopefully, I know that the community is doing a lot to advocate for faster timelines, which is great. Dr. Al-Lahham, any final thoughts or comments from you? I think we took all the questions that we received.
I think this is a very exciting time to be able to do such kind of trials in as a chain of trials instead of one at a time, and having all these kind of centers and sites being activated kind of like really on a regular basis every week. It looked like you were adding a site or two. That's really good. So when we sit down with patients, we all kind of face the tough question about like, where are we heading? Like, there has been no breakthrough for a long time, and actually there has been no breakthrough at all in ALS. But I think this is a very exciting time. There's a lot of challenges in ALS, and hopefully the next 4 or 5 years is going to bring something really big. And as you mentioned, like Regimen D, you started 6 months later on, and you're going to be able to get all these results very quickly. And I think all this experience that we all building is going to help to have a breakthrough somewhere. And when you're going to have all these kind of medications being studied, I think the next step will be like put it together. And if we can have a combination of two medicine, what do we do better? Kind of like what you already start doing in some places. So I think that's basically where the whole excitement happening right now. I can tell you, especially for our site here, for more than a year, I have many patients kind of like asking, when you're going to be activated? And I think that excitement from patients will be really kind of the main factor that's going to make it very fast.
Thank you. So thank you again for joining at UPMC. I'm really glad that the trial is enrolling there, and obviously we welcome your participation on Regimen E and many more regimens next year.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.